Cold War tensions, very interesting. There has been an arms race between the USA and USSR, and they both became very competitive, each wanting to be the strongest and feeling threatened by the other. There was an arms race to have the most powerful weapon. So the arms race to achieve the most powerful weapons. Okay, so that's the gist of it. So arms race, and I told you, I think we discussed about that, but we're going to put it in writing right now because I want to make sure that you will remember heaps of stuff and you'll go very confident to this exam. This exam will be fascinating for you. You'll see. You will realize by the time you end the last exam and you'll be free in holiday that you learn heaps of stuff this year. Probably you didn't learn so many different things in any other subject, I hope. So Germany and Japan, what was the situation with Germany and Japan? Look at the newspaper on the left, Los Angeles Examiner. Nazi surrender, Europe war comes to an end. So Germany surrendered in May 1945, but the war against Japan continued, and we know that. And in order to end that war and in order to avenge the Pearl Harbor bombing, in August 1945, the USA dropped 2 bombs or atomic bombs on Japan, destroying the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Obviously, probably we're going to talk about this later on, but during the peace conferences, the American president told Stalin about how he bombed with an atomic bomb Hiroshima. And Stalin was, that was an amazing, absolutely amazing reaction. Stalin was happy, like you are happy. You've seen these scenes of happiness when you watch Oscar ceremony and you see all the images with the contestants for the best director. And they announce the winner, and everybody else pretend that is amazingly happy and laughing and enjoying how they've been beaten. So exactly the same. Stalin was so happy with the amazing success of the Americans, of course, on the expense of the poor people of Japan, who died instantly. Half of them, they died instantly, half of them as a result of the bombing. So tens of thousands of people who died. Japan surrendered, but not immediately. Immediately after the second bombardment, they've been actually announced that they're going to be bombed. They didn't believe they've been bombed. They didn't actually renounce surrender. And after the second bombing, they surrendered, but without saying that they surrendered. So very proud people and stubborn. And this was on the expense of their own people. The bombs were incredibly powerful, and thousands of civilians were killed. In the case of Hiroshima, 80,000. In the case of Nagasaki, around 75,000. USA and USSR, I love this photo. I found it on the internet. All of them on a kind of chess board. Chris will be happy to see that. And Queen and Justin and some other people who are playing chess in that class. Now we talk about the arms race. The USA had kept the atom bomb, the A bomb as they call it, a secret from the USSR until just before it was used in Japan. For 4 years, the US of A was the only nuclear power on the planet. These were the only 4 years when there has been only one nuclear power. Nowadays we have many. some of the nuclear powers are kind of managed by crazy people, so that's concerning. In 1949, the Russians exploded their own atomic bomb, so they joined the club of atomic power. Consequently, after this, remember the Rainbow Warrior, all the discussions about French testing in the Mururoa Atoll. So after this, Britain, France, and many other countries developed a nuclear weapon. But we are interested in the war between the Americans and the Russians because that was the base of the tensions, that was the base of the future Cold War. In 1949, so they tested their own bomb. The USA developed an even more powerful hydrogen bomb, H-bomb, in 1952. The USSR had followed with their own by 1955. And there is a saying that Stalin went crazy after the Americans announced that they had the atomic bomb. So he sent all his spies to work, all his physicians, all his smart people, scientists to work towards equaling the Americans. Then USSR influence in the Eastern Europe. This is the part I kind of like the most because I know this, I learned heaps of this on my skin. And it's always the human experience which makes it even more believable. When I teach this, I am kind of, I have many memories, many emotions, tough times, very tough times. And people living in a free society, they don't know this. They don't know how it is to be in a closed society. So at the end of the Second World War, the Soviet Red Army occupied Eastern Europe. Stalin, obviously, he didn't have any intention of keeping the promise he made at Yalta Conference. That was the peace conference to settle the Second World War together with Potsdam Conference. And he promised there to allow free elections in Poland. Of course, we are talking about Poland because Poland was an element of, a contentious element in all the discussions, including the start of the war. But Poland was not so affected by communism like other countries, for example, my country. Between 1945 and 1948, Stalin installed pro-Soviet puppet governments in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Czechoslovakia. For example, in Romania, the Soviet government was installed in 1947, was run by Dr. Petru Groza. That was his name, Peter Groza. And at that time, Romania was a monarchy. There was a very, very little support for communism, probably in 5%, something like that. The status in the Second World War, we've been Germany's allies, and we turned against Germany 1 year before the war was over. Now, we've been liberated by the Soviet troops, and the Soviet troops remained in the country after liberation. They accepted a coalition government in 1945, the Russians, but with key positions for communists. Communists trained very well in Moscow. They gradually took over police and security forces. This is what they do in order to, contain a country. And then they organized rigged elections in 1946, where the communists and their allies won. Guess what? From 5%, they won 90% of the vote. They've done a show trial for the leader of the oppositions in October 47. They set them They sent them to the Gulag, and then our King Michael was forced to abdicate in December. In December, Romania became Republic, Socialist Republic of Romania. King Michael was forced to abdicate after he was threatened that 1,000 students will be killed if he's not going to do that act. And he abdicated, obviously, and he left in exile for Switzerland. And actually, I met King Michael, and I'm very proud of that. Free speech was suppressed. Obviously, that was the first thing to disappear. No free speech. And again, you don't know what's that, but it is difficult. Non-communist parties were banned. Can you see any similarity here with what Hitler did? I can see lots of similarities. So non-communist parties were banned, but look at that, what they did. Not even Hitler thought about this. Even communist parties were controlled by Cominform, which is the Communist Information Bureau. This organization consisted solely of Russian-style communists, hardliners, as we call them, hardliners, very tough people with kind of tough directions to follow from the main communist party, which was in Russia. So this is about USSR influence in the Eastern Europe. Just a little bit of this a very interesting part of the history. This is Mr. Stalin, Comrade Stalin, in a very cool cartoon. It's very clear what he's doing. He's pulling these pins with his flag, so controlling all this area, saying clearly that's mine. Okay, so you can see Bulgaria, you can see Yugoslavia, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Finland, the Baltic states in the top here, in the north over here. So clearly, look at this, Soviet Russia in black, then the grid, countries in Soviet political, economic, and strategic bloc, countries with communist or communist influenced governments, and then under strong political pressure, look at this, Turkey and Germany and Austria, huge political pressure. Because of that, the Americans will come up with Marshall Plan to add, to help actually these people not to fall to communism. We'll talk about that later. So after this, we continue a little bit after what they did in Eastern European countries. Look at that. They invented COMECON, which is the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. This was something to counteract the Marshall Plan, which was the Americans' way to help countries not to fall under communism. Now, this was set up in 1949, and it worked to nationalize the state's industry and collectivize agriculture. For you, this is just a simple sentence. You write it, that's it. Then you're gonna go to your to your activities, and you're gonna be happy, which is cool. For many people, this was a dead sentence. There were heaps of peasants who lost their lands, collectivizing agriculture, meaning something like Frontera, creating something like the Communist Association of Frontera, which means that heaps of people are coming together under one umbrella. The only exception is that in Frontera, they still own their lands and stuff, but they are just associated. But in communism, people lost their lands. And for people living in the city, it doesn't matter too much. They can survive. People living from the land in the countryside, many people committed suicide or they protested and they've been sent to Gulag. And it was a tragedy for my country and for many other countries. Not to mention nationalizing the state industry. If your grandfather will have a mini factory or a business, like, I don't know, selling TVs or selling whatever, you name it, fridge, and all sorts of other things. The state will take that, will take it over, and you will, your grandpa or you or whoever will be in that business will work as workers, and you'll be paid a salary, and that will be it. And another reason for people to be in the middle of dramas, heaps of dramas. Okay, so for a while, it seems that Czechoslovakia will remain democratic, but it was just just a little bit of Russians not being very proactive. When the Communist Party seems like likely to lose the ground in the next elections, the communists come back, seize power in February 1948, and bye-bye with the dream of freedom. However, I want you to understand this, which is extremely contentious, and the people from Poland, Czechoslovakia or Hungary will be like, oh yeah, okay, I don't really agree, but I'm telling you, as your teacher, believe me, because I lived in the middle of these countries. The communism was really mild, or should I put it like liberal, in Central European countries, a very mild communism in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary, and a very, very, very tough communism, a Stalinistic type of communism with the East on the table, based on force and communists being ruthless in Romania and Bulgaria. Very, very difficult for people living in there. The exception to all this Soviet domination was Yugoslavia, which was a very interesting country, always with the easiest type of communism. They had an amazing leader and dictator, one of the good dictators of the planet, together with Franco, and the guy from Portugal, Salazar. But coming back to Yugoslavia, Yugoslavia was communist, but more open to the West, and this is because they didn't they were not helped by the Red Army to free their country. They freed their own country without the help of the Red Army. So really, Josip Broz Tito was arguing with Stalin, who cut off aid, but he didn't invade. And Tito was a very good friend with Ceausescu, my dictator, and that was probably because we were on the same border with Yugoslavia and with Bulgaria, so quite good relations between Romania, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia. Anyway, again, lots of things to take on board. Heaps. I know that you know heaps of this stuff, but yeah, almost there, boys. So this is a map with the Eastern Bloc. Eastern Bloc will be, so the red ones will be obviously countries under full control of Soviet Union, parts of Soviet Unions, the Soviet Republic of Georgia, of Ukraine, of Belarus, of Lithuania, blah, blah, blah. Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Albania, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, and Eastern Germany will be in the Eastern Bloc. So that will be the name. And also Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. Look at my country's flag in the middle of the all, okay? So that will be it. The Iron Curtain, almost there. It was a very, very famous speech of Winston Churchill talking about this. There has been increasing tensions between USA and USSR, and they become known as the Cold War. It was called like that because there wasn't any direct fighting, and it was more like both sides trying to gain the upper hand with all sorts of alliances and plans, recovery plans, helping each other, helping militarily each other, denouncing the enemies, blah, 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 all that stuff. Both sides communists and capitalists, they were afraid of another war because of the huge power of their atomic bombs. Russians and Americans, of course, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, they don't have atomic bombs. But Russians, the big daddies, and the Americans will have that. Countries in Western Europe tended to support the Americans, obviously, the traditional allies. Most countries in Eastern Europe, they didn't support the Russians, but they were dominated by the Russians. And we remember here, Yalta conference, we didn't do that. Unfortunately, we're going to do this later on in our studies in the next years. Yalta conference settled everything after War II, and Stalin was there in a position of asking wherever he liked. Why? Because Stalin lost heaps of his soldiers, he lost heaps of money, and the Russian contribution to defeating Hitler was quite vast and big. So really, Stalin went to Yalta and he said, now I am talking first, I am choosing first, then you talk, then you choose, then you discuss. So he said, I want this, that, and that. And these were the countries he wanted to dominate. Okay? And Churchill said, yeah, great. And he shook Stalin's hand, which was absolutely abhorrent, because no one actually gave Churchill the permission to give Romania to the Russians, or Bulgaria, or Poland, or Czech Republic, or whatever. Just name it. And it was just another, probably that was a policy of appeasement, appeasing Stalin, if I should say so, because again, the British, they did this. They did us a big disfavor. Okay, so we were not very favored by the British anyway. Countries in Western Europe tended to support the USA. Most countries in Eastern dominated by USSR. In a famous speech, Winston Churchill warned that there was an Iron Curtain dividing Europe. And I think I have this speech now. It's just 2 minutes or something. You can watch the entire speech. I'm going to show you after we finish the lesson what's on the YouTube channel for you. Extraordinarily, amazingly good goodies, if I should say so. So let's watch this. This is actually not the speech. This is a cartoon. Look at this. Some people trying to save themselves from the Iron Curtain. Made in Moscow. These are the people planning for the New York. This is the guy who is screaming, a Russian guy screaming capitalist pigs. You can laugh about this, but this is how we were brainwashed. Capitalism was when you will say capitalist, you will automatically need to put an adjective or something bad about it. If you just say capitalist, you will be corrected immediately. That's not in the line of the party. You have to say capitalistic bastards or capitalist pigs or whatever. You won't talk about capitalists nicely, okay?